Christmas morning in India, and the silence was brutal. No pots clanging in the kitchen, no morning chai, no calls from the living room asking about breakfast. Sumit opened his eyes and knew something was off before he even sat up. The bed next to him was cold. Jenny was gone. Not just out. Gone. No note. No message. No packed bag in the closet. Nothing. Her sandals weren't by the door. Her pink scarf wasn't on the chair. The air felt still, almost staged, like someone had erased her presence on purpose. And Sumit didn't even panic at first. That was the strangest part. He walked around the apartment like maybe she'd pop out and say surprise. But she didn't. He picked up his phone. No missed calls, no texts. He checked Instagram. Her last story was from 2 nights ago, posting a photo of homemade holiday cookies they'd baked. That night, everything seemed fine. No argument. No cold shoulder. If anything, she was unusually calm. She'd even kissed him goodnight, like it was any other day, which made the absence feel even more deliberate. Hey, this is Sabrina, and you're watching TLC Drama Live, the only place that breaks down these stories the way they really play out. If you're as stunned as we are, hit that subscribe and let us know in the comments. Was this Jenny's quiet goodbye or something more? Now here's where things start getting uncomfortable. This wasn't an impulsive exit. Jenny had planned something behind the scenes, quietly, carefully. While Sumit was stuck in his usual someday mode, Jenny was making real decisions. She had booked 2 tickets to Palm Springs, one for her, one for him. Round trip. Christmas Eve departure. No fanfare, no social media hints, no cryptic countdowns. It wasn't a power play. It was a last chance gift. A final offer to spend the holidays in her world for once, not his. And yes, she used her own money. For weeks, she'd been setting it up. Flight confirmations buried in her email drafts. Luggage quietly stashed. Even the travel adapter she always forgot on past trips was packed this time. She told no one, not even the TLC crew. She was hoping he'd say yes last minute, like in the movies, that maybe he'd shock her for once. But he didn't. Sumit told her 3 days before the flight that he couldn't go. Visa issues, he said. Again. But this time, it wasn't about paperwork. It was about comfort, about routine, about how easy it was to keep saying, next year. And Jenny, who's heard that line through 10 Indian festivals, 3 surgeries, 2 fake wedding announcements, and 1 near deportation, didn't argue. She said okay. She nodded. She hugged him and said she understood. Then she waited. And when the waiting gave her nothing, she packed. The biggest shock? Jenny never canceled the second ticket. She left it open, left the return flight untouched, left his name on the reservation in case, by some miracle, he chased after her. But he didn't. And now, Christmas morning was here. Sumit was staring at an empty bedroom, trying to convince himself this was temporary. That Jenny would be back before sunset. That she went to get something from the market. That the ring still on the dresser meant anything at all. He didn't realize yet that the ring wasn't a message of love. It was a message of closure. And the flight had already landed in California. Jenny was already gone. No chaos, no drama, no threats. Just quiet movement, the kind that leaves no doors open. Sumit didn't scream. He didn't storm out or throw anything. He didn't accuse Jenny of manipulation or betrayal. Because deep down, even if he wouldn't admit it to himself, he knew why she left. This wasn't a shock. This wasn't some sudden breakdown. This was the natural end to a pattern he refused to interrupt. The excuses had gotten more polite over time. First, it was finances. Then immigration timing. Then his parents. Then the paperwork delays. Always something. Always valid on paper. Always just inconvenient enough to stall without completely closing the door. But Jenny had heard the same story rearranged in different costumes for over a decade. This Christmas was supposed to be different. She hadn't asked him for anything big. No marriage vow, no green card timeline. Just a few days together, in her country, around people who spoke her language. Just for once, she wanted to feel chosen without compromise. But Sumit flinched. Not with a hard no. With the soft rejection that stings worse because it pretends to be reasonable. He said, maybe next time, and smiled like that was kindness. He said he couldn't miss work. That travel was expensive right now. That the paperwork stress was too much. Jenny didn't cry when he said it. She didn't protest. She didn't beg. Because she knew the shape of this script already. She'd seen it play out on birthdays, anniversaries, family deaths. Every event that pulled her toward home, Sumit met with friction. Not because he hated her family, not because he was cruel, but because he couldn't release control. He couldn't live in a version of the relationship where she had full freedom. He was comfortable. In India, he had the power. The language, the family, the rhythm, the culture. He was the translator, the guide, the fixer. In Palm Springs, he would be none of that. He would be the partner who had to follow. The one who was silent in restaurants. Who couldn't distract her with errands and logistics. He would be exposed. And maybe that was the point. For Jenny, this trip wasn't about sightseeing or beaches. It was about perspective. About putting distance between herself and a life where she had slowly shrunk to fit. And when he backed out, she said nothing. She didn't argue. Because she'd already decided what to do next. That silence, it wasn't sadness. It wasn't defeat. It was clarity. She stopped repeating herself. She didn't send reminders, didn't forward the itinerary again, didn't leave the tickets on the counter like bait. She simply started folding clothes at night while he was out. She double-checked her documents. She took the little blue bag she once used for grocery trips and quietly packed it with every memory she didn't want left behind. Not souvenirs, not photo albums, just the essentials, her passport, her phone, and a small envelope of cash she hadn't touched since their last argument about financial planning. Sumit didn't notice. That's the part that sticks with people. Not the departure, but how invisible the buildup was. The fact that someone can be right next to you, planning their exit in silence, while you're busy assuming they'll always stay. Jenny wasn't running away. She wasn't chasing some fantasy. She was preparing for peace. A kind she hadn't felt in years. The kind that didn't need to be explained or negotiated. And she never once asked him to follow. Not in words, but in action. The second ticket was a test. And Sumit failed. Quietly. Repeatedly. Predictably. She zipped her bag, slipped the itinerary into her wallet, wrote down the gate number on a sticky note, and sat still for 5 minutes before leaving, just in case he woke up and asked the right question. He didn't. He slept in. The house was quiet. Jenny opened the door and stepped out without a sound. And that's when the clock started ticking on how long it would take him to notice she wasn't coming back. Jenny didn't wear makeup that morning. No earrings, no lipstick. Just a soft gray hoodie zipped to her neck and a small roller bag that looked too light for international travel. Airport security footage captured her around 5:45 a.m., standing in the check-in line with a carry-on and a passport pressed to her chest like armor. No TLC crew. No handlers. No drama. She wasn't performing. She wasn't breaking down in public. But the heaviness in her shoulders told the whole story. She stood alone. Not distracted. Not scrolling. Just waiting. Every few minutes, she looked down at her phone, typed something, then erased it. There was no call to Sumit. No last-minute plea. She wasn't hoping for a change of heart. She was past that. Instead, she opened her messages, paused, and typed out a short text. No emojis, no hearts, just a name at the top of the screen, Chris. That was the first time anyone outside her closest circle saw it. No kissing selfie, no couple photo, no clues to age, gender, or location. Just the name. And the timing. The internet exploded within hours. Was Chris a friend? A lawyer? An old flame? No one could prove anything, and Jenny wasn't offering answers. But what stung for many was the context. Her first communication after walking out wasn't to Sumit. It was to someone else. She didn't need to explain. The silence was enough to make the audience question everything. Because sometimes, it's not what someone says. It's who they say it to. And Jenny made her choice without a speech. As she waited near the boarding gate, a fan spotted her from across the terminal. They didn't approach. They took one blurry photo, respectful but stunned, and posted it with a caption that would go viral within minutes. Saw Jenny from 90 Day Fiancé alone at the airport. She looked like she wanted to cry but was holding it in. That picture ended up everywhere. A woman sitting in a hard blue chair, elbows on her knees, eyes staring straight ahead, and no one sitting beside her. That image carried more weight than any interview could. Because in that moment, you could feel it. This wasn't a performance. This was a woman choosing herself in silence. Back at home, Sumit was still asleep. He didn't know she was already gone. He didn't know the fan photo existed. He didn't know she'd already sent a message to someone else. But he would learn. Slowly. Publicly. Brutally. And one thing was clear. Jenny didn't take her wedding ring with her. She left it on the dresser. Not in anger, not in spite, but as a signal. She wasn't keeping the symbols anymore. She was keeping the reality. And reality meant starting over. Alone? Maybe. But awake. The ring wasn't the only thing Jenny left behind. Tucked under the tree, inside a small glittery red box, was one final Christmas ornament. It wasn't flashy. Just a silver ball with a snowflake etched on it and a tiny tag taped underneath for later. It hung in the back, not front and center, like she didn't want it seen too soon. Inside that ornament was the receipt from her round-trip ticket, folded neatly. Both passenger names printed, hers and Sumit's. And below that, in handwriting only he would recognize, one sentence, "You always had a seat." She wasn't throwing it in his face. She wasn't mocking him. That little gift wasn't for the cameras or a fan moment. It was for closure. For when the silence stopped feeling safe and started feeling loud. Jenny had spent most of her time in India living within someone else's system. She was the guest in Sumit's country, his home, his family dynamic, his rules. Even when she was being filmed, even when she was legally married, she was still the one being tolerated. The one adjusting. And now, she was done adjusting. She didn't ask him for money for the trip. She didn't check in about prices or whether he'd approve. She didn't run it past his parents. This wasn't a shared plan. It was a private decision funded by her own account. One he never saw. One she quietly built back up after every time he asked her to wait a little longer. It wasn't about the dollars. It was about what the money represented. Control. When someone finally controls their own exit, everything else changes. Jenny wasn't rich. She wasn't running off in luxury. But she had enough. Enough to buy space. Enough to move with agency. Enough to not need permission. That kind of financial freedom doesn't always look glamorous, but it moves mountains internally. It says, "I won't be stranded again." And this time, when she walked out, she wasn't looking back for help. For years, Jenny had taken care of Sumit, supported him emotionally, stood by him through public humiliation, family threats, culture wars, and a marriage that almost didn't happen. And still, at every big moment, she was made to feel like the outsider. Now she was writing herself out of the script. That ornament, that receipt, that quiet placement under the tree, it wasn't meant to be seen right away. It was meant to be discovered later, when the denial faded. When the questions started coming. When Sumit finally asked himself, did she really go without warning? Yes. Because the warnings had been happening for years, he just didn't listen. And the worst part? He still didn't know. He hadn't found the receipt, hadn't touched the ornament, hadn't even noticed the silver ball wasn't part of their original decorations. He was still pacing the apartment, still checking his phone, still assuming this was a temporary mood. Still waiting for Jenny to come back and explain why she left. But Jenny wasn't sending explanations. She was finished with negotiations. It wasn't Sumit who discovered Jenny's departure first. It was his mother. Again. The call came mid-morning while Sumit was still trying to convince himself Jenny had stepped out for errands. His mother's voice came sharp through the phone, questioning, not concerned. Where is she? Not is she okay? Not are you okay? But where is she? He didn't have an answer, not a real one. So he lied, reflexively. Said she went to meet a friend, then asked why. There was a pause. Then she said she's not coming back. Sumit froze. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement, almost matter of fact. As if she'd already put the pieces together in a way he refused to. The daughter-in-law who never truly belonged had finally walked out, and the woman who had resisted her presence from the beginning now spoke with eerie certainty. No joy. No mockery. But no shock either. It was the pattern. Jenny had always been on the outside. And when she left, it wasn't her husband who first noticed the gap, it was the people who always expected her to disappear eventually. Over the years, Jenny had been the last to hear things. About family meetings. About ceremonies. About future plans. The conversations were always, oh, we thought you knew, or it slipped our minds. She'd learned to keep her questions light and her expectations lower. Now, the roles were reversed. This time, they were the ones blindsided. Sumit's mother didn't find out because Jenny told her. She found out because someone from the extended family saw Jenny's airport photo online. The blurry terminal shot. The tagged location. The timestamp. It was already spreading, and by the time it reached Sumit, it was no longer news. It was confirmation. His phone lit up, message after message, not from Jenny, from cousins, from friends, from that one aunt who never liked her, all forwarding the same link. Is this real? Did she leave you? Why is she alone at Lax? He stared at it. Read it again. Rechecked the photo like maybe it was an old image resurfaced by mistake. But the outfit matched. The scarf was hers. The bag. The stance. There was no denying it. She was gone. And the world knew before he did. That's what silence protects. It guards the truth until it's too late to deny it. Sumit's panic didn't come from the fact that Jenny left. It came from how prepared she was to go without needing to look back. And now, as the messages poured in, as the questions piled up, Sumit stood in the middle of his apartment, ring on the dresser, ornament unopened, unable to answer a single person with honesty. Because he still hadn't called her. And she still hadn't called him. This was not a fight. This was an exit. Sumit didn't explode. There was no meltdown, no camera smashing, no shouting in the streets. His face during that first statement to TLC producers was something else entirely numb. He kept blinking like he hadn't processed the question. He kept saying, I don't understand what happened, as if denial could buy him more time. But time wasn't on his side anymore. Jenny had taken that with her. He finally gave a recorded comment 2 days later. TLC posted a clip. His voice was low, flat, no fake tears. Just confusion. She left. I didn't know. I thought we were okay. He didn't point fingers. He didn't bash her. But the damage wasn't in what he said. It was in what he didn't say. He never asked her to come back. Not once. He didn't beg, didn't plead, didn't make a grand gesture. He stood in front of the camera with that same tired smile he's worn through 1,000 episodes, repeating, maybe she needed space. And that was the moment fans started seeing him differently. Because loss doesn't always scream. Sometimes it sits quietly, paralyzed, hoping someone else will do the hard part first. Jenny had spent years taking that burden on herself. Speaking first, explaining first, soothing first. And now that she was silent, Sumit didn't know what to do. He called her. Once. No answer. He texted. Are you okay? No reply. Then nothing. He froze. Because he wasn't ready for a version of Jenny that didn't circle back. Sometimes the loudest message is the call that never gets returned. It's easy to paint someone as emotional, unstable, too sensitive when they keep coming back. But when they go silent, the story shifts. Now it was Sumit standing in the middle of a narrative without a script, looking for cues that weren't coming. The fans who once defended him started asking harder questions. Why did he wait this long? Why didn't he ever visit her family? Why did she always have to be the one bending? The sympathy didn't vanish, but it moved. Quietly. Toward the woman who stopped asking for what she wasn't going to receive. Back in Palm Springs, Jenny stayed off social media. No photos, no beach shots, no new filters, no peace signs. Her silence wasn't bitter, it was firm. Sumit tried once more. A message that read, "We should talk." Delivered. Read, no reply. He checked again later to see if the phone said typing. It never did. Palm Springs was quiet that week. No big family gathering, no fancy hotel suite. Jenny wasn't out shopping or sipping wine by the pool. The people expecting fireworks or a makeover montage didn't get either. Because this wasn't about reinvention. It was about finally catching her breath. The Airbnb she rented wasn't even decorated. No tree, no lights, just a small candle on the windowsill and a folded blanket on the couch. Her phone stayed face down most of the time. The notifications kept coming. Friends, castmates, reporters, but she didn't open them. No holiday selfie, no Merry Christmas post. She didn't owe the internet a happy ending. She spent most of the first day in silence, walked around barefoot, made tea, opened her suitcase and didn't unpack it. She wasn't celebrating. She wasn't mourning. She was pausing. The kind of pause that only happens when you finally realize you don't have to prove anything anymore. People confuse silence with sadness. But Jenny's quiet wasn't about grief. It was about release. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting on anyone. Not for approval, not for plans, not for apologies. She was just still. No camera in her face, no producers asking what she felt. No edits coming in later to soften the truth. She was alone. But not abandoned. And Sumit still hadn't called again. Peace doesn't always feel good at first, but it feels real. She'd carried the weight of that relationship for so long, it almost felt unnatural to stand upright without it. The anxiety of guessing how someone else would react. The stress of keeping things calm, smooth, quiet enough not to trigger another argument with his family. The way she'd tiptoe through decisions, second-guess her tone, swallow her needs. Now, all of that was gone. And in the silence, something else showed up. Clarity. There were moments that still hurt, like watching a couple walk by holding hands, or seeing a pair of tickets sitting unused on the table. But those moments didn't pull her backward. They reminded her why she'd left. Because there's a special kind of loneliness that comes from being with someone who refuses to grow with you. And once you stop tolerating that, being alone doesn't feel like punishment anymore. It feels like recovery. So when her phone buzzed later that week with an email from her lawyer confirming the annulment filing had gone through, she didn't cry. She didn't text Sumit. She closed the email, locked her phone, and made herself another cup of tea. One name on the paperwork. One decision. No permission needed. The paperwork didn't mark the end of a marriage. It marked the end of a pattern. The comments started piling up fast. Reddit threads, Facebook groups, Instagram tags, all watching the same silent collapse from different angles. Half the fans called Jenny brave. The other half called her heartless. Some said it was about time. Others called it betrayal. But no one looked away. The split was sharp. Those who had watched her beg for 10 years called it liberation. Those who only saw her walking away on Christmas called it cold. People dissected her airport photo like it held hidden clues. Was that sadness or satisfaction? Was she texting Chris or just checking a flight update? That name Chris bothered people. Not because they knew who he was, but because they didn't. He was the blank space everyone filled with their own fears. For some, he was emotional support. For others, he was a secret affair. And for those clinging to Sumit's version of love, Chris became the excuse to make Jenny the villain. But none of those theories could erase the years on camera. The waiting. The public humiliations. The maybe next time loop. People wanted a clean line between victim and villain. But life doesn't work like that. Jenny had flaws. So did Sumit. But one of them acted. One of them left. And that changes how people assign blame. It also made people uncomfortable. Because Jenny breaking the cycle wasn't just about her. It forced people to look at their own patterns. How many times had they waited for someone to change? How many soft rejections had they swallowed under the label of patience? Sometimes public judgment says more about the audience than the person being judged. Jenny had been painted as desperate for so long, some viewers couldn't handle her walking away with her dignity intact. It didn't fit the character arc they wanted. But Sumit didn't come off clean either. Because now, his quietness felt less like sensitivity and more like avoidance. He wasn't trapped by Jenny. He was trapped by his own choices, his own comfort, his refusal to commit fully to either world. He didn't fight for her the way he once claimed he would. And fans started calling that out. Why didn't he follow her? Why didn't he explain himself publicly? Where was his apology? He didn't post. He didn't speak again. Meanwhile, a new account started following Jenny's old travel page. Username Chris_714. No profile photo. No bio. Just one like on an old picture of Jenny smiling in front of an Indian temple long before the marriage. No one knew if it was real. But the timing lit everything up again. There were no long Instagram captions, no tell-all interviews, no dramatic YouTube premieres with Jenny spilling tea on a couch. And that silence? That was the power move. Because the receipts were already public. The annulment filing was official. The return flight landed. The fan photo from the airport was timestamped. The name Chris was real, visible, and unanswered. But Jenny said nothing. She let the facts speak, and that choice hit harder than any carefully worded press release. The timeline was tight. Tickets booked weeks before. A second name left on the flight. An ornament placed under the tree with a receipt. A passport ready. A quiet departure. These were not last-minute moves. They were deliberate. Quiet, but structured. She wasn't reacting. She was exiting. And still, no public declaration. Why? Because declaring it would have turned it into a spectacle. It would have made it about revenge, image, ego. Jenny didn't need that. She didn't need followers to validate her pain. She wasn't performing her freedom. She was living it. That silence, that refusal to posture or posture back, made people uncomfortable. It forced them to reframe everything. Maybe this wasn't a Christmas breakdown. Maybe it wasn't even about heartbreak. Maybe it was about someone who spent years asking nicely and finally walked out without asking at all. Control doesn't always look loud. It looks like knowing you don't have to explain yourself anymore. The speculation didn't stop. People argued over the timeline, the messages, the presence of Chris, the absence of tears. But Jenny never corrected anyone. She let them talk. Let Sumit talk. Or not. And in that space, she reclaimed something she hadn't had in years. Narrative control. Because for the first time since they started filming, she wasn't the one being explained. She was the one watching from a distance. She didn't need to give interviews. She didn't need to defend her choices. The annulment papers were real. The ring was left. The flight was taken. The silence was intentional. But one question remained, the one no one could shake, even after all the analysis, all the footage, all the fan theories. Did Jenny plan this all along? Or did she simply accept, quietly, painfully, that this was never going to change? And once she accepted it, did she start packing the next morning? Or had she already been packed for months? Christmas morning hadn't changed. The image was still the same. Sumit in the apartment, barefoot, half awake, looking around like something was missing but not ready to name it. No suitcase. No ring. No Jenny. The dishes were untouched. The chai kettle cold. That quiet still wrapped around him, heavier than any argument ever could. But now, everything that looked like abandonment suddenly looked like something else. Not punishment. Not drama. Closure. Unspoken, unannounced, and entirely hers. Because Jenny hadn't walked away in a fit of rage. She hadn't left to hurt him. She didn't post a quote about healing or tag herself at the beach with a cryptic caption. She didn't make herself the main character in a public spectacle. She just ended the story without asking for permission. That's what people missed when they rushed to label her exit. This wasn't about someone being cruel or selfish. This was about a woman quietly deciding to stop being the only one trying. Not every relationship ends with a bang. Some dissolve quietly. Some are over long before anyone admits it out loud. And sometimes, the bravest thing isn't staying one more time. It's walking out the door without needing to slam it. The annulment wasn't revenge. It was a reset. And Sumit? He was still there. Still checking his phone. Still opening messages from people who saw the aftermath before he did. Still wondering why she didn't say anything. But the truth is, she did. Over and over. For years. In every conversation where she asked him to come with her. In every time she folded herself into someone else's life. In every visa meeting, every family confrontation, every postponed plan. She was always saying something. He just didn't hear it until she said nothing at all. Now, it's quiet. No posts from Jenny. No clarifications, no reunion rumors, just stillness. And Sumit? He's starting to post again. Subtle shifts, old memories, filtered photos, but always alone. No captions explaining where she went, no details about what he's feeling. Because maybe for the first time, he's starting to understand what silence means. And it leaves one last question echoing in the space they used to share. When someone leaves without slamming the door, do you even know the moment it closed? What happens next is something fans are already watching closely. Sumit's next move isn't about public image. It's about whether he finally breaks the cycle or repeats it with someone new. And the signs are already there. You won't believe what he does next.